Hey friends, welcome back to Confidence and Coffee, where we keep it real, raw, and a little bit caffeinated. I'm your host, Ashley Henriott, speaker, author, and your go-to hype girl for when life feels like a lot. Around here, we talk about things that keep you up at night. Self-doubt, fear, people-pleasing, faith, and finding your voice again, without the fluff. So grab your coffee, pull up a seat, and let's talk about stuff that actually matters. Hey, Confidence and Coffee family. Happy Tuesday. I am so excited that you're here. And I'm excited for our guests. And you're probably like, I know Ashley's going to say excited. I can't help it. I love my people that God gets to bring on this podcast. And we are here with my friend Mary. She's going to say her last name because I overthought it.
It's Marantz like dance.
It is Marantz like dance. Okay.
You got it.
We're going to call her Mary, okay? We first names over here. We're first name basis. She was introduced to me by another friend that we had on the podcast named Kristen. And as soon as I saw her book, Underestimated, and I saw the things that God put on her heart, her story, her perspective, I just realized she's the real deal. And she's here to give us the raw, real reality of revelation in Jesus and what he's done for her. Mary, welcome to Confidence and Coffee. I'm so honored to have you, friends. Like, tell me more about Underestimated. Like, what brought that book to life for you?
Yeah. Well, buckle up, Ashley. It's about to get good right from the beginning.
Let's go.
It's about to get a little unexpected right from the beginning. And for everybody listening, I grew up in a single wide trailer in very rural West Virginia, child of the 80s. So, when I say single wide trailer, I mean like the true, I think my parents bought it in 1978, like tin can of a trailer. The thing to do in the 80s with a single wide trailer was to build like a one room lean-to shack as like the bonus room edition out of like whatever wood you could find in the yard. Basically, being a child of the 80s, we were basically feral cats. So me and my friends in the neighborhood would climb our way up onto the very top of the trailer in the rain and go sliding down it like the world's most painful slip and slide.
Oh my gosh.
Which meant that the roof started to leak. I always say my people are the people who know what drywall ceiling looks like right before it gives way in a downpour and this kind of pregnant pause before the...
I know that life, sister. I lived in the Slim Shady same trailer park.
All right.
Girl.
So we didn't know this. We did not know this before we hit record, right? We did not know this about each other.
Let me tell you. That's why we hit record, so they can know it.
Yeah, that's right. So yes, the ceiling starts to leak and cave in. Then the floor starts to leak and cave in. The brown shag carpeting is so rotten through and muddy from my dad's logging boots and the stray animals that would just go inside the house, that we grew mushrooms out of the carpet at one point. And, it was just kind of the roughest version of a trailer you can imagine. You don't have to imagine. And then you fast forward 20 years of my life and I end up at Yale for law school, which is sort of like not what we normally expect that outcome to be. But at the same time, it's also a very like an underdog trope we're very familiar with. We've seen this movie, we've read that book. And so I got that sort of underdog complex from a very young age. And I've known both what it is to be underestimated, but then to also kind of try to use that as jet fuel to prove everybody wrong. That works very effectively for a very long time. And then to kind of realize maybe the person who was counting you out the most was you.
Okay. I want to go back,
Yeah.
Miss College Lady. You just took me from floors going through and mushrooms to college.
Yeah.
There must have been, what was the breaking point for you? Because I don't want you to have to talk on things you don't want to talk to. But let me tell you something, Miss West Virginia. I'm presently in Northern Virginia, in Winchester, but we moved a lot. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, moved to Gaston, Alabama. So I went from one hood to another hood, ended up on the Outer Banks, found Jesus, and then now I'm here in Virginia. And so I know stories like yours and mine, Mary, can be complex. And it's so hard to talk about it. Like, it's so hard to get it all out of like what wrote the book, right? Like of what God has done in our life. And so I would love to know, where did Underestimated come from? Because we did make a big jump. Was it, when did you start seeing these issues like where you talk about like imposter syndrome? You talk about overthinking, right? Like you talk like, what do? We wear books that says, sorry, let me overthink this. Like I do it all the time. Where did you start to become aware
Mm,
of these things and what made you like what was that fire for you that made you want to say, I wrote this book and why?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think to really fully answer that, we go back a little bit. This is actually the third book. Dirt was dirt. So, like,
Which
like,
yeah, you told us
yep.
about that.
Yep. So that's sort of this journey of like, how do we go back home and make peace with our past, right? We've heard this kind of story before. We've seen that play out. It usually becomes, look what I did, or like, it becomes a story about estrangement, which sometimes that's just somebody's story and how it unfolds. For me, it was like, what does it look like to find your way back home? I heard a really beautiful quote from Ian Morgan-Cron when he was on my show, where he said, the first half of our life is the parable of the talents. We're just trying to make a profit with these gifts we've been given. And the second half is the parable of the prodigal son. We're all just trying to find our way back home. And so Dirt is really about like, how do you find your way back home, make peace with your past, have empathy for the ones who, came before and didn't always get it right. And, kind of let go of like this feeling that you have to go live your life despite your story, that you thinking that your story disqualifies you. And then Slow Growth Equals Strong Roots, which is my second book, is about how do we stop getting, give up achieving for our worth and trying to gold star our way into belonging. And so if it's make peace with your past, quit achieving for your worth, then the third step in that evolution is now how do we go do the good work that was prepared for us in advance, the work we were put here to do, and quit playing small on what we're being asked to go do in obedience. And so to answer your original question, it's, I get into Yale Law School and there's this part in Dirt where I say, what if success is where the real trouble began? What if you get everything you ever wanted and you still feel like a walking, waking imposter? What if you still have to whisper to your thin epidermis, why are you still screaming? You have everything you ever asked for.
Oh,
And so
I
I would
feel that.
say getting into Yale is maybe where the trouble began. And it kind of kicked off 20 plus years, 25 years, 20 years, we'll say, of trying to achieve my way into worth, make my life so beautiful on the outside that it made up for how muddy it was when it started. I thought the only redeeming thing that could happen with my story is if it all turned out happily ever after. There was never this concept that maybe it was just beautiful because it was. So that's kind of the,
That's
you
like
know,
the beginning
yeah.
when you got to underestimated like through this journey, like, and that's a good back context, and we'll put more in that in the show notes. Um, but like I would love to know, like, and so in underestimated, you talk about like the simple shift to quit playing small, and then you talk about naming the fear and moving forward anyways. Can you
Yeah.
break those down for us? Like, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole book is premised on this idea that fear's a really boring liar. And like the same lies it uses on me, it uses on you, Ashley, and then vice versa. And for everybody listening, that it's actually, I say in the book, like, what if fear attacks creatives because it is jealous that it itself is not creative at all? And fear's not a very creative guy, but he is a busy guy. And like any good productive overachiever, he's learned how to prioritize and how to kind of batch process work. And so he's only going to bother you if you're doing work that matters. If you're already playing small and hiding in plain sight, he's going to pretty much leave you alone. But for those of us who do dare to step out and do work that might actually help people, God forbid, help people, then he's going to show up full force, teeth bared and snarling. And he's a prioritized guy, but he doesn't really have a lot of different scripts in his back pocket. And so chapter by chapter, I go through some of the most
Mm-hmm.
common names and faces of fear that I have experienced, all 14 of: self-sabotage, second guessing, perfectionism, people pleasing, imposter syndrome, overthinking, even a fear of success. And really just kind of like, if Dirt is the story of my life, Underestimated is sort of the textbook companion that answers, why are we the way that we are? Why do we doubt ourselves and blink at the very last minute when we almost have pushed this boulder all the way to the top of the hill, right? And so for the surprisingly simple shift, there's actually even like a breakout page in the book that says, I read an article once that said the best ideas are a switch, not a dial. They don't just turn the volume up on what we were already thinking. They find a way to flip that thinking on its very head. And so most of the advice to quit playing small is go big, deep and the net will appear. And that I'm a big fan of the go big moments. I've had plenty of them in my life. But the problem is the day after that, the day after you get into Yale, the day after you sign a 5-book publishing deal, the day after you finish a coast to coast speaking tour with a tour bus and your face on the side, you go back the very next day doubting yourself and playing small because those were things that happened to you, not who you were becoming. So paradoxically, some of the most important work we'll do to quit playing small is to start small, because then it's actually becoming part of our identity and who we are and who we're becoming.
Yeah, preach. I want to go back to something in your book about fear, if that's okay.
Yep.
You talk about fear as a really boring liar. The reason this intrigued me is because I've never heard it said like that. And you have like a list in the book, it
Yeah.
talks about, and like a little bit of like what we tell ourselves. Like
Mm.
it's all been done. It's all been
Yeah.
done better. It's all been done by somebody the world actually wants to pay attention to. I can't start until it's perfect. I mean, the perfectionism, and you talk about that in the book. Like there's so many of these that you list, and how many of us have said it. Like one that stuck with me personally was, what if they say, who does she think she is?
Yeah.
And the reason for me that that connected with me when I was reading your book is because I talk about stop caring what people think,
Mm.
because that was a big thorn in my side. And I found that that was really rooted in that, like, needing approval, right? That
Mm.
needing to be seen and belong. And as I dove deeper into that, I discovered that, like, we're designed that way. We're designed to be needed. We're designed to be wanted. We're designed to be seen. But where we take all of that is what matters. And so it's not getting rid of those things that is just natural for us as humans. It's about putting it into the right hands
That's
to
right.
fulfill that.
Yeah.
And so, that really stuck with me because I feel like you said, like it goes connection, like think big, right? Like you got to go big, like, and you said too, you're like, chances are, like if you and I were playing, I wrote this down, fears of punk bingo, right? And then I love that you're like, I love your humor in it. You're like, then your hot pink, dauber would
Dauber.
have
Yeah.
just run out of ink.
That's right.
Like I love how you visualize that for us. And so I just wanted to appreciate you in that. But like I
Mm.
go to say that because if we go back on that, fear comes in many different shapes and forms, right?
Yeah.
Insecurities, like fear comes in that approval. Do you want to kind of dive in a little bit, like where you're like the whole, like, we don't need to think bigger, but what are some of those fears that when we think about those things that we say, like what would you tell somebody practically as a business coach and they're starting something or they want to step out? Like what would
Yeah.
you tell them if they
Yeah.
really struggled with those things?
I'll tell you what's coming up for me in this minute, Ashley, as you're describing, as you were talking about like that ache to be seen, that ache to be known. I feel like there's always like a game recognized game, like those of us who had hard stories, especially trailer girls. I've been shocked at
Hey.
how many trailer girls I've met through doing this.
Yeah.
There is this, just like the whole book of Underestimated starts with a quote from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross that says, beautiful people don't just happen. And it's this idea that like the most beautiful people have known sorrow and suffering. And it's, I say there, it's like pain is like progressively finer grits of sandpaper that rounds off the hard edges. And so like I recognize that. And even as you're describing it, what comes up for me is chapter 10. And this gets back to an earlier question you had about like, hey, listen, that's real nice to go trailer. And then I ended up at Yale Law. It's like the yada yada part. So one of the things that comes up both in Dirt and in Slow Growth, and then finally here in Underestimated, is my mom leaves when I'm 9. And in Dirt, I kind of go into great detail talking about how perfect sort of became a weapon for me. Like I'll show anyone who has left us, who has hurt us, who didn't choose us. I will build a life so pretty and perfect and beautiful and exceptional on the outside that it will make whoever left regret their decision. And there's, this line that's kind of talking about like, it reminds me of a daisy growing in this scorched earth wilderness. This kind of like beauty in the midst of nothing, basically. And it's like this idea of like, it's wilting in the environment it chose to grow in. And it's like, yeah, you can do that. This beauty from ashes from a distance. Like, my story ended up working out. Proved you wrong. But like, how long can we really survive that way? And so the whole perfectionism chapter, it's not very little in this book is like what you would expect it to be. Like they're much like Mary, there are layers and layers and layers that continue to peel back. And so that chapter kicks off with me talking about how I've become somebody who's very like stoic, very like hyper vigilant, hyper independent. I'm very self-sufficient to the point of self-sabotage, where it's like,
Uh-huh.
I
I was
don't
about to say that's not always a good thing when people, like,
know.
we're overly independent, like
Oh
walls
yeah.
up. I'm the same way.
Yeah. So in Dirt, my grandma Goldie, who's a main character, is infamous for saying, I'll do it myself. And I adopted that mentality. And so there's this part where I start saying all these things that I've come to believe, like, I don't want you feeling sorry for me. I don't want you averting your eyes on some sort of sympathy shame on my behalf. While we're at it, I don't want your, unless specifically asked, good advice, best practices, good opinions, or like suggestions for how I move forward. They burn in my ears, run down my throat, and taste like condescension. I don't want you worrying about me. Then I'll just have to worry about you worrying about me. And so it starts with this, like, I don't need people. And that section kind of ends with, like, as you can imagine, this becomes a very lonely endeavor indeed. It turns out not needing people is a great way not to have any. And then it comes on this big arc of, like, we think perfect can keep us safe. We think if we can just wait until it's perfect enough, nobody could ever criticize it again. Nobody would ever reject us again. And then it ends with that story about my mom and the Daisy I was just describing, and like realizing how many ways we abandon ourselves trying to become this perfect version that will somehow finally be enough that nobody would ever leave her again. And so it's perfect as the Chapter 10, perfect is hiding with better PR. What if hiding hired a really good marketing team and rebranded as perfect during perfectionism? Oh, I'm just a perfectionist, I'm just an A+ overachiever, not, oh, I'm hiding in plain sight because I'm afraid it's not any good. And so it's got teeth there, and it's got depth there, and it's about like what my life was like and what it became to prove that I was somebody worth staying for.
So basically, we need to go get dirt and we need to get underestimated.
I mean, I'm a fan.
Listen, can I just be so for real with you? Chapter 3 was my favorite about self-sabotage.
Yeah.
We don't talk
That one
about it
hurts.
enough. Like, I remember the first time somebody told me many, many years ago that I was self-sabotaging. And I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
Because people are so unaware that they're doing it. It's a trauma response, right? Like, all these things that we're doing are because of trauma.
Yep.
Let's be so for real. And you have something in chapter 3, which you have no idea. This is like my mission. This is what I coach, is how to, and I have a quote in my book that says, when we trust God, we can trust ourselves. And when we're enough for God, we are enough for everyone. And in chapter 3 of your book, you have a visual of how much we trust ourselves, and it's a cup. And on the outside of the cup, you said, what this dream will actually require. You talk about like what it needs, and you have it like at where it is on the cup. And then you have inside of the cup, with like it filled with water or whatever, what we trust ourselves to handle.
Yeah.
That is so stinking good to me.
Yeah.
You have no idea. And then you go into, I mean, I could talk about this all day long, but you go into, most likely, you talk about that is us mistaking what is familiar for what is safe. So you talk about perfection is a kind of makes us safe. And girl, read my book. We are the same, Mary.
Yeah. I'm seeing that.
Yes, like we could talk forever, but let's keep it on you, my friend. But most likely, I love that when you're like, you talk about safe. The only reason I brought chapter 3 up is perfectionism and safe, but you talk about what is familiar for what is safe. That is like a deep, I'm going to stop talking because I'm taking you everywhere, but that is one of my favorite chapters. Do you want to talk about self-sabotage?
Yeah.
And then what do you mean by that visual that you gave us in your book?
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. I think to me, so like chapters 1 and 2 kind of set the problem up of like, this is what it's like to feel like you keep starting over and the boulder keeps rolling back down. And this is why fear is so boring and predictable. Chapter 3 is where, in my opinion, where the real work of this book begins. And so just a little bit of a backstory that first requires me to admit to you and your audience, and apparently all of TikTok, that one of my guilty pleasures, a lot of people have the Kardashians or the Bachelor in Purgatory or whatever, where you're not getting picked, but you're still not going home, whatever. And so anyway, one of mine is these really cheesy success accounts on Instagram where they usually are posting things with like a lion superimposed on a Lamborghini, roar until you get everything you came for, kind of idea.
With the AIs now?
Yeah, yeah. There's a
Look
unicorn
out.
flying in the sky. Yeah, totally. And so on this one particular day, as I was kind of scrolling by really quick, one of these accounts actually had up a really beautiful post, and it was a picture of a tiny shot glass. And it said, if you believe you have the capacity of a shot glass, then anytime you get any more than that. And I just have to pause to say that for somebody listening, or probably for several people listening, or a lot of people listening, myself included, we have believed the lie most of our lives that more would be our downfall.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That one hurts. Yeah.
What in the world? Right now, could you just say that again?
Yes, for a lot of us, we have believed the lie, and it is tied up like shackles around our ankles as we're climbing up this mountain, that more would one day be our downfall. There's a part in chapter 1 where it's like, forgive us for taking a little longer. We're doing the work. It's just that our work is untangling generations of limiting beliefs about what happens to a person when they finally get more, Forgive us for taking a little longer. For some of us, we believe the lie that more would be our downfall. And that one's where this kind of starts to unfold here in chapter 3.
I can feel like the devil is so, like, I can literally feel the enemy so angry that you just shared that with somebody that needs it right now today.
Yeah. Believe me, with the stuff that we've had going chaotic in our lives, like our car dying twice in 2 days, he's not thrilled. He's not thrilled that I'm out here saying these things. My husband got food poisoning. Our boiler's about to die. My
I
Facebook
did
account got
too.
hacked.
Mine did too. Can we pause? Let me pause for a second. Let me just share. When my book came out last October, I got food poisoning. I got pneumonia. I lost my grandfather. I lost my grandmother. And an hour later, after losing my grandmother, holding her hand, telling her goodbye, I lost my baby sister to an overdose
Oh
in my
my
grandmother's
gosh.
house. And then my air conditioning broke 2 times. Okay. I got food poisoning again, worse than labor. I'm just going to say it for what it is. Okay. That
Yeah.
was the worst kind of pain. And I'm getting a divorce. No big deal.
Wow.
Okay,
Yeah.
enemy. I see you.
Yeah.
I see
Yeah.
him working on us, Mary. No.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I said this to my husband, Justin. I was like, he does. And listen, our car died before this book. Our car died before Dirt. My Facebook account got hacked this time. It got hacked before Slow Growth. Like this is what I mean. Fear's kind of a boring enemy. He's got like a limited set of things, and it's not that they don't hurt, but it's just like the same things over and over again.
Over and over again.
And I said to
Yeah.
my husband, like, I don't know what he thinks he's doing because I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to stop. This is going to help way too many people. This is going to help way too many family trees. When people like us get free of fear, like the ripple effects from that are going to go on and on. People who have the kind hearts, who have the pain has rounded off our hard edges, who have these gifts and these talents, and who actually want to change things, not just for their families, but other hard story people's families as well. When those people get set free, the ripple effects are going to blow my mind. I hope I get to see a glimpse of them one day in heaven, And so I'm not going to stop. I've proven, I think 3 books in, we're not going to stop. So like, what is it going to take for him to just leave me alone?
I don't think he does.
I don't think he does either.
I mean, I can feel I'm a feeler, obviously, right? I'm an empath,
Yeah.
but I have strong discernment, and I've built that discernment with trusting myself. That's another reason I love, okay. I love this book. Okay. I love it. It resonates with me so much, Mary. And I just I'm one of those people too, like where, I come back and I'm very much like in my head, like, when is it going to stop? But, I think of Moses, and you said something, I hope to see the rippling effect. And that reminded me of what I used to think about, where the Lord reminded me of Moses, where Moses was like full of doubt. He's like, I'm not the guy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I mean, God probably shook his head, but he's like, Moses was the only man that God spoke to. But
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? And took a cloud and gave him a cloud of fire, right? And so Moses, even then, was still struggling with doubt, and he still was constantly in question about his ability, about trusting himself. But when he finally did marry, when he finally was like, okay, God called me, he didn't just go into the promised land, he went into battle. He was ready for the battle, and they had to fight for the land, right? And once they got through that, and the Israelites were absolutely ridiculous, we don't need to get into that.
I resonate with them though.
I don't we all? Honestly, when I read about them, I'm just like putting my head over. I'm like, I'm not related. I'm not related to them. No, I'm just kidding. But I just think about are we willing, Mary? This is so off of course, but Holy Spirit lead us. Are we willing to look at that? Look at what all the sacrifice, look at all the battle, look at all the war, look at all the attacks, and look and be like, even if I don't see it,
Right.
I
Yes.
know it's worth it for those who will.
Yeah.
And are we ready to be like Moses? Moses sinned. I mean, he did a naughty, naughty thing. But still, God, did you know Moses was the only person God buried, and no one still knows where his body is? Personally. But he did something before he buried his body, before Moses passed away. And he let him see what he had done. He let him see all those people enter into the promised land. Are we okay? Are we good? Are we okay with just that?
Wow. Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
we okay that we're taking the battle and we're taking the doubt, right? And we're taking all the things and the sacrifices like Christ. Like, we don't want to talk about the sacrifice of Christ. We want to talk about the gaining of it, which is great, but it comes with a cost. Your calling will come with a cost.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
think that we need to talk about that more, but the way you talk about it in your book is empowering, but not the
Mm.
false kind of like boss babe,
Right.
like confidence, but the very much like, like we really need to dive in deep so you actually know the truth.
That's right.
Like there's another thing that you talk about, and I love this because I'm all about, trauma has messed with our chemicals in our brain and stuff, right?
Mhm.
And I'm all about that. Like I'm all about therapy and theology because I've walked through that. Mary, you've walked through that. Like for me, I was abandoned by my real father. I was like, I can't say it online, but essayed by my stepfather and, very, very, very abused. We lived in constant homeless, abandoned houses. Like we moved a lot. There was a lot there. And I know that are you still in Michigan?
New Haven, Connecticut.
Okay, okay. But were you guys in Ram? Maybe I was reading something wrong about Grand Rapids, Michigan.
My publisher's in Grand Rapids. Yep.
Well, we're not giving your publisher credit. Okay. I was like, oh my gosh, that's the first thing I wanted to bring up to you. Anyways, ADHD. But really quick, and then I'm going to shut up. You talk about in chapter 3 that you talk about raw nerve ending neurons
Mhm.
and that they can be, and please correct me about the misinterpretation. And it's a bad geometry proof gone
Yeah,
airy.
that's
Okay.
right. Yeah.
There's like, there's 5 things that you list. One is I just want to get up and go Pentecostal right now. Like I just want to run. Like God is so good. Okay, you talk about one is chaos is familiar.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Ouch on that for me. Okay. Familiar is gosh, man. I'm sorry, you guys. This is just so good and I'm so giddy. Chaos is familiar. Familiar is comfortable. Somewhere along the line, we mistook being comfortable. Let me pull it up so I say this correctly. Hold on. Okay. Somewhere along the line, we mistook being comfortable for being safe. Write that down, my friends. If A equals B and B equals C and C equals D, then A equals D. Therefore, by the law of transitive property, chaos must equal safe. And
Yeah.
you talk about Lindsay C. Gibson, who is a psychologist and the author of Who You Were Meant to Be. And you
Mhm.
kind of give us some context to that. But do you
Yeah.
want to kind of
Yeah.
connect that? Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to shut up.
I just want to say that thank you for sharing all that about your story. There's a similar scene in Dirt about the thing we cannot say. And like if I were with you, I would just put a hand on either cheek and then move one to your forehead. Like I just like that's what I want to do like right now if we were together because I see little Ashley and I just see this beautiful light like pouring out of you. And I see that that light was not remotely extinguished, that it actually just, for anybody who's looking and anybody who has eyes to see, they can see like what a beautiful, pure, right? Like I see picture like a hot white light, just filling up the room. And
Stop.
I think you're wonderful. So that's what I would say first. Yes. So the thing that you're mentioning, because I just want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm not actually saying that's how it should be. I'm saying our brains, with these raw exposed, neurons that are just screaming out for any kind of relief, like a bad geometry proof gone awry, we can make that logical conclusion that's actually false, and that return to chaos. That sense of internal chaos becomes the only thing we sort of knew. And because our brains have mistaken familiar ultimately for safe or comfortable, and comfortable is safe, we will return to these patterns over and over again, despite that scripture that's like, why do I not do the thing I most want to do and continue to do the thing I do not want to do? It's like,
Yeah,
why
like
do we
Paul
keep
talks
doing this?
about. Yeah.
And so really just to kind of like piggyback that answer back on what I was talking about earlier when we sort of paused to talk about more, we're afraid of what will become of us. So the shot glass, every time it gets full, we shrink ourselves back down at the tiny containers we believe we belong in. Very shortly after I saw that post, I had Dr. Allen Cook, who wrote The Best of You. It's a phenomenal book if you've never read it, on my show. And I said, Allison, how do we stop doing this if we don't even realize we're doing it most of the time, if it is subconscious? And we pulled up this part of her book and talked about it. And she said, for those of us who didn't grow up with a sense of safety in our childhoods, for those of us who grew up in kind of a chaotic environment, it can flip this internal survival mode switch that we feel like we can't turn off. And she said, if you didn't learn this when you were little, you can actually reparent yourself. You can reteach yourself a sense of safety. And the way that you do that is by setting small but important commitments to yourself. They have to be manageable, but they also have to matter to you. and then actually keeping them. And she said, as you do that day by day, honoring commitments to yourself, both big and small. And then she looked me right through the lens, like we're looking at each other right now. And she said, as you do that, Mary, you are becoming the grown up in the room who can be trusted. That grown up is you. And I just burst into tears on the spot because, like you said earlier, so much of this self-sabotage comes because we don't trust ourselves. And Christians get really uncomfortable with phrases like that. It's like, well, we're not supposed to trust ourselves. We're only
We're
supposed to
just
trust God.
filthy.
Yeah,
We're
right.
oh my gosh, I could talk about that all day, Mary. We have a million
Yes.
episodes we should do. I'm just saying.
Yes. But like I kind of draw a distinction in this chapter between, capital T trust, where our ultimate hope resides. But little t trust comes into the picture too. We have to believe that we are capable of stewarding this stuff well, that we can be trusted with more without messing it up and making it all about us and, it being our demise or what have you. And so, yeah, it's that whole chapter is where a lot of this work of that small, simple shift of like, we're going to begin the work of becoming through small but important commitments and actually keeping them. And as we do that, we're trusting ourselves to steward more and more and have more of a capacity that we just didn't learn when we were little.
Talk about capacity for a second. You said
Mm.
as we steward that, we'll have more and more capacity.
Mhm.
Capacity for what?
Yeah, so that post that I was telling you about, the cheesy one on the cheesy account, the not cheesy one on the cheesy account, as it were, the way it ended was it says, we have to expand our capacity, expand it until it fills an infinity pool. And it's like, of course it had to be an infinity pool on an account like that. But the idea is that if you're in a shot glass, it's not about trying to get more into the shot glass. It's about stretching the boundaries and the parameters of what we think we can hold well, what we
Like
can
more.
steward.
We're scared of more. Yeah.
Well, we're scared of more and we're scared of, all that brings with us. I was on an episode right before I hopped on to record with you, and we were talking about like um she had a post go viral, or she'd had kind of like she launched a book and then like everything was kind of coming at her all at once and all of these opportunities were coming, and with that comes a lot of eyes and it comes a lot of criticism and it comes a lot of, am I going to mess this up, like if it all falls on me? So capacity, I define it in the book, is the amount we are able to hold space for and steward well as we respond to it with wisdom. That can be things like growth and eyes on what we're doing and success and money, but it can also be negative things too, like a pruning season and a season of anonymity and a season of being misunderstood. And so a lot of it comes back to what you're saying. I just wanted to like exclamation point that of like, the more that you trust God and that he didn't make a mistake and the good work he prepared for you in advance and that he knows what he's doing when he's asking you to step out and do in obedience the thing he's asking you to do, then other people's criticism and other people's praise, all the really good opportunities and the things being stripped away, don't change that internal sense of, God gave me this talent. I'm not going to bury it. I'm not going to hide it away. I'm going to trust that I can do whatever he's asking me to do with the people and the places that need served right in front of me. And a lot of other stuff gets in the way of that. The kind of, if the chapters kind of had an arc, it's like I can't even move because I'm self-sabotaging and shrinking and second guessing and not enough. And I feel like an imposter. Okay, maybe I've begun to think about moving, but now other people get involved with like overthinking. There's too many steps in the process. I should procrastinate because like, what if it's not good enough? I have to people please and it needs to be perfect. And then the final one is, okay, I've begun and I'm going up the hill and now the stones are really being thrown in the form of failure and criticism and distractions and ultimately success itself being something that's hard to hold on to. So it's kind of a big journey of, how do we stop making it about staying safe and being protected? I say in the book, you cannot bubble wrap purpose. There's no amount of shrink wrap you can do that will keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just about like, how do I trust that what I'm being asked to do is what I'm being asked to do, and I don't need anybody else to co-sign that.
Oh my gosh. I think you have so much wisdom. I mean, everything that you say, the co-signing of that.
Yeah,
I don't need anybody to co-sign
that's
my
right.
calling.
That's right.
Okay. Okay. So do you do this, the shift? Talk to me about the shift. And my favorite chapter in chapter 3, yeah, it's chapter 3. The shift, you talk about self-sabotaging and you always have like I don't want to say quote, but like at the bottom of my book, I have like the tools, the
Yeah.
build, the foundation. And you talk about self-sabotaging. You always give us something at the end of each chapter. And this one in particular, when we're talking about that, has told you to shrink yourself back into the tiny containers you belong in because you can't be trusted with more. Instead, set small but important commitments to yourself and actually keep them, which you just talked to us about. And then you talk about the next chapters and how we're going to have to look at each of the faces of fear to see how to fight that particular brand of plain small with another small, surprisingly simple shift. You say simple. And,
But not easy. Yeah.
but yeah. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think that's an important thing is like this, you don't go to the gym one day and consider yourself in shape, or
What?
even
I
consider
see
yourself
the
a gym rat.
definition, Mary. What are you? I go to the gym once a day, once a month, and I see and I'm like, girl, look at you. You look
Done.
so good. Like it's in my head, obviously, but
Well, I need to join your gym, clearly.
clearly.
No, no, no. It's we don't become a gym rat by going to the gym once. We don't become a chef by chopping an onion once, right? We don't become a kind person by being mean 364 days out of the year and being kind one day. Like it is everything. Your life will be determined by what you do every day. It's that idea. And when we're kind of showing up and we're doing these things, there's going to be plenty of days when you get it wrong. And there none of the shifts, they're all simple. It's all like just here's one adjustment, right? The cover of the book is a compass. And if you look on the cover, we're going a little bit sideways here, but it matters. If you look on the cover real close, there are actually these dotted lines. There's an X marks the spot and a dotted line and an X marks the spot up here. And if you like are tracking, right, it's like here we are going along and it looks like we get stuck, right, as the kind of path curves up. It looks like that's the end of the road. We have to turn back. We don't know where to go from here. But if we just have a surprisingly simple shift, then we actually can, move. Like, I'm doing this backwards, but you get the idea. You shift the compass and now the way forward becomes clear. And, there's the mountain and like there's all sorts of imagery about coming back as the guide. And so that's the kind of compass idea. And it's like the things I'm going to tell you to do are going to be one small shift in your perspective, one small shift in your behavior, one small shift in like we're putting in our reps, we're building the muscle of becoming a person who doesn't let procrastination have the final say. Perfectionism make us think we'll be safe. People pleasing make us think that there's a permission that might ever actually come, that there will come a day when somebody comes and taps us on the forehead and says, now you're ready. Now you should go do that dream. Spoiler alert, it never comes. And we're always going to be waiting for that if
It
we.
never comes and it's exhausting. It's an
Yeah,
exhausting road to go down.
it really is. Yeah. So simple, but not always easy. But we're flexing the muscle to become a person who, fill in the blank.
Yeah. I I find that this is culturally very difficult for people. I know in my generation that concept is extremely difficult. I see a common thread of like, you either go from one, I don't care what anyone thinks, screw you, woo, I'm living my life, and it's kind of like a defiance to
Mm,
like I care about what everyone thinks and it
yeah.
paralyzes you. And where for me like I helped people find the balance of like accepting the fact that you do care, but taking that need to the one that it matters and only letting and being content in Christ, being content and Him saying that you are enough and letting that be your driver's seat. And so I just want to say thank you for that compliment. It is an honor when somebody says they see light because, like, it is Jesus all the way. And so
Mm,
I get overwhelmed emotionally when people say that because, we're undeserving. And I want to add this because we're running out of time and I want you to like the one thing you want our audience to take from this and then also like where they can find you. But I
mm,
waited to say this to the end and I brought that in is like, I've done the inner child healing and I'm really proud of child Ashley and everything
yeah.
she went through for me.
Mm,
And what I've learned in therapy is that we wait and we depend on other people to protect us, right? Like my biggest thing, and I talk about it in like a document series coming out at the end of the month, is that the one thing I never felt, but I always wanted, and I was willing to do whatever it took, was to feel safe, was to feel safe. And I never knew what that was like. And so, in trying to find this natural need to feel safe, I found it in all the wrong ways, right? These false securities that we create, these fantasy dreams that we create. And then when something really good comes along, it's like we sabotage it.
okay.
Yeah. And so I go to say this is because, going back, like, and what I've learned is that we protect ourselves, Mary. Like, we don't need to keep waiting for a protector. And the beautiful journey with Jesus is that He will show us who He is in our lives. He will show us how much He loves us. He will show us that we can trust in Him. But there will come a time that He's going to turn the mirror around and He's going to be like, I trust you too. I want you to see you the way I see you.
Right.
I want you to believe in you the way I believe in you. That's like me sending my kids to school, and I want them to always have the mindset that they are unbelievable, that they are powerful, that they are amazing, that they're lights, but also they're protected and they're loved, and they can protect themselves, and they can trust their own they can trust their own choices. And we want our kids not just to hear that from us, right? Because you and I both know that's not enough. Our kids tell us it's not like, oh, you're just my mom. So there will come a time where it's like, God, yeah, you love me. I know you love me. Well, he's going to take you to a season of like, but do you love you?
Wow. Oof. Yes. Yeah.
But do you? But do you see you the way I see you? Do you believe you in the way that I believe in you? And
That's
that
it.
changes everything.
That's right.
So the reason a lot of Christians are like, don't like the self aspects of things is because we still see us in a crappy light. But Jesus is like, I made you in the image of
Right.
myself. I created you in the image of myself. I don't know about you, but I don't think God wants us going and being like, I'm crappy. Kind of offensive. The Lord wants you to see the beauty of who He's created you to be. And in your book, Underestimated, people are underestimating themselves, Mary.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you know what this brings up for me, what this reminds me of is I feel like I understand the mentality of people who want to say like, "Oh, I'm muddy. I'm nothing. I'm filth without
I'm the
God."
same way. Yeah.
But like it's almost as if people are living in like a groundhog day of like Thursdays or Fridays and not acting as if we're over here on Sunday. And like maybe that was true, but like the second that God came to take up residence in you, like that is no longer your record. And like, are we going to act like we have the Holy Spirit and the God of the created everything is the one who created us, or are we not? And I feel that 100%. And I think, like, just to speak to the person who is worried that you don't want to raise your hand, you don't want to step forward because you're afraid you're going to start to make it all about you, just the very fact that you're even worried about that makes me not worry about you. It tells me that you're in it for the right reasons. It tells me that your heart is good. There's a part in the book where I say, if you want me to be honest, some of the least real deal people I've ever met are the ones who are not afraid at all. They do not have any skin in the game. They do not know what it is to bleed for original work on the page that they are proud of. They do not know what it is to suffer and have passion,
Come on.
right? There's a reason passion means suffering to bring these gifts into the world. There is nothing on the page for them, no skin in the game. So what would they be afraid of? We flip the script on fear when we say, good, I must really care about this thing I'm about to put out into the world. I must care whether it makes good on the promised transformation or not, whether it was created with originality and integrity and excellence and love for the one person it might help, and love for the work itself. Because when you create from that place, it no longer matters what the critics have to say. All that matters is that there is somebody waiting for what you have. God could have done it without you. He could have, but He chose not to. He chose to create a world with free will. He chose to create a world where He co-creates with you, and He wants to complete a purpose that involves you in particular. This crosshair intersection of your gifts meeting your story in the year of our Lord 2025 that no other human like you has ever existed before. He made it where He actually wants you to take this pivotal part in what He has planned. And if we don't, another year goes by and the clock goes on ticking and the world is worse for your absence. And the voice in your head that wants you terrified of every little thing, every 14 fears we lay out in this book, that voice is terrified of the day you realize that perfect records were never a prerequisite for the purpose that has been written for you. We don't want you to be perfect. We never asked you to be perfect. We just need you to show up.
Yep. And you talk about that. You talk about we believe there's actual right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go on and on and on. And you talk about the certainties of feeling like safety, about people second guessing themselves because they think they are right and wrong answers
Yeah.
or ways of doing things. And since they are under this illusion that there is a perfect answer, they continually spin out and get caught up in questioning and regenerate. The dyslexia is coming out.
Relitigating.
Thank you. Every decision they make. And that's where the
Yes.
second guessing comes in. Mary, we could go on and on. We're coming from the same streets.
That's right.
The same humility. And I'll tell you what, I'm so grateful for it. And I can tell that you are too,
That's right.
because we can go in the darkness and help people navigate to the light because we've walked in it. We've
Yeah.
walked in the dirt. The dirt doesn't scare us anymore. And I'm just so grateful that you said yes. I'm so grateful that you continued into your calling in spite of cars breaking down and losses and grief and attacks from everywhere. You kept showing up and you
Yeah.
kept being real about it and authentic and genuine. And God needs people like that. That's the people that he uses, is when it's like, I know that I don't know how or if but I'm going to do it anyways because
Yeah.
I trust the Lord. And because I can trust the Lord, I trust myself. Mary, what is one thing out of this whole conversation you would love our listeners to take from here? And then where can everybody connect with you and get the book?
Yeah, I really just think it comes back to that idea of like fear is a really boring liar. And the second you can really start to wrap your head around there's just a pretty limited repertoire of broken scripts he uses on you, the quicker you'll be able to identify them. And so some of the great work of this book for me, like when I consider it to be like, what is the backbone of this book? It's putting really memorable visuals to the different kinds of fear. It's Edward Scissorhands and, making us feel like all of our pertinent parts are missing, and missing a second guessing is a missing handbook. It's the research riptide. It's the Oliver Twist problem. It's the princess and the pea problem. It's the speed worthy leap we have to make at the top of the mountain. And the quicker you can recall a visual of what that face of fear is, the quicker you can name it. And then it's sort of like Sarah Rice on the This Changes Everything podcast has said, it's like pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz. It's just a snake oil salesman. And when you get back there, that's really all fear is. And so just remember that fear attacks all of us the same way. And the quicker we can say fear showed up, we can go, good, we're about to do work that matters. And then like for where they can find us, if you head to achieverquiz.com, we've actually put together a fun quiz that goes along with the book. There are 5 different achiever types. Depending on your type, you get stuck playing small in different ways. There's the performer, the contortionist, the masquerader, the tightrope walker, and the illusionist in the distance. Am I waiting on perfect? Am I chasing bigger and bigger highs? Am I always on my toes, showing other people how far I've come? Am I hiding in plain sight, or am I contorting because it is easier than to be criticized? Achieverquiz.com. Quiz takes 2 minutes. Questions are super fun. Results are super deep in a merry way. How you get stuck playing small and how we move forward. And then if you go to namethefear.com, we have all the information about the book up there, including the whole first chapter up there free that you can check out. Download it, start reading today, get a feel for my writing and for the book. And that's namethefear.com. And then I'm at Mary Marantz on Instagram.
And I'll put all that in the show notes just in case, they're ADHD like me and they forgot from the first thing.
Nice.
But that quiz does sound amazing. Like,
Nice.
I
It's
want to
fun.
go take that quiz.
Yeah.
Mary, thank you. I'm so honored to have you. And Justin, is his name Justin?
Yeah.
Justin in the back, we see you, homie. I'm just so honored. And I hope to have you back on Confidence and Coffee as you tell us about your next book and what God's put on you.
Swapsies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, you guys, if this episode hit home, do me a favor. Screenshot it, share it to your stories, and tag me, Ashley Henriott, so I can hype you up. And if you're feeling bold, leave a review. It helps this podcast reach more women who need it. Remember, confidence isn't something we wait for. It's something you build. Keep going, keep growing, and I'll see you next time on Confidence and Coffee right here.